All right, we're excited now to be joined by Marc Russ from NFL Network, draft analyst. Marc, thanks for sitting down with us here.
My pleasure.
We're in a little bit of a different position this year. We've been picking up at the top for a while, and now suddenly we're back down at 31. How do you see this draft playing out? I feel like at that point you kind of wait and see maybe who falls through the cracks.
Yeah. Speaking of your flip, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit. Our preseason predictions and shows, we used to talk about what team can make the jump. I said the Patriots are going to flip their record.
All right.
I said it's on record. It's there. I said they're going to flip their record. Didn't think you go to the Super Bowl, but things fell the right way. But, this week for the Patriots, last year was just – all right, what are we doing? Like, none of these players are on the team, right? And then you go crush it in free agency. You went and crushed it in the draft. And now you built that foundation. And now it's, okay, we're in a completely different place now. What do we do here? But, be a cautionary tale where Washington last year was in this position where their timetable got accelerated so fast. Like, it was almost the worst thing they could have done, making it to the NFC Championship game. Because then they went all in on this, like, let's go do it now. And then it kind of fell apart. So, I think the Patriots have a better foundation, a lot more players than the Commanders had, but the same kind of theme of, okay, we still got to be smart the way we're building this and make sure we identify the right players who are going to get us to win it now as opposed to just getting there.
No, I love that perspective because we've had debates on our shows because a couple months ago I said, well, we don't want to be the Commanders, right? We don't want to push the chips in too quickly. But then the Super Bowl happens and the playoff run happens, and I'm like, man, if they get Max Crosby, they'll be right back here. But what is just sort of your perspective there on, how to kind of slowly continue to build this thing while recognizing how much success that they had last year?
Yeah, well, you still have to. I mean, if you have money, you got to spend it. You just can't sit there and not. So if there's certain players out there, you still have to be smart with the money. Smart. This is like last year with the freeze. Y'all had the money, you had to spend it, and you spent it wisely. Okay. Bill Williams and Carl, you went through the whole list. Like, no, this makes sense. It wasn't like, why did they do that? It all made sense. So, again, I think with that approach with Elliott and Vrabel and how they're going to approach it is still smartly making these decisions of how to allocate the money or signing your own guys, and then in the draft as well of, okay, we know how to identify playmakers, and let's just continue doing that.
Yeah, speaking of playmakers, they need at edge is obvious. Mm-hmm. Elliott Wolf talked about it yesterday. Strong draft class. When you look at the play style that Mike Vrabel's looking for and you look at this edge class, are there any guys that you see, maybe that slipped through the cracks down there or in the 30s that might fit?
Yeah, that's it's an intriguing group there, and I think, Mesidor from Miami because he's older. Like, if you just watched him, you didn't know how old he was. Like, man, this is the best edge rusher in the draft. Now you've got to factor in that other stuff. So, of the guys there, of course, we've heard about Bain and Bailey and those dudes, but Mesidor could be that one that gets down there because of the age factor, and teams that'll be scared away. But, he's a monster. Watching those two guys play, you understood why Miami made it to the national championship game once I started watching film on them. So, of those top guys, the younger ones, not as many red flags, he's the one that could creep down there.
When you have a part of the draft class that's that deep, like edge rusher, and it does feel like this year it's kind of a flavors thing too, where there's some guys that are 265 and there's some guys that are 240. Does that kind of make it almost easier in a way because you kind of know what your fit is and sort of what the guy you want?
Yeah, for sure. And that's where your scouting staff and your coaching staff have to be on that one accord to know this is the type of players that fit us. And you see a lot of the teams with success, let's say a Baltimore's of the world, where those guys have been together, this is their system. Now we just got to find those players that we know fit, as opposed to, okay, a new coaching staff, a new scouting. Well, what are we really looking for? What are we identifying here? And, with the Giants, it was always, we just worked hand in hand of, all right, there's no guesswork where this guy is not going to fit us. We're not going to bring in a, X player that has these measurables or this skill set because we know he doesn't fit. Now, if the talent is super supreme, you better find a way to get them on your squad. So that's why it's so important for those guys to work together to know what a Patriot player is.
Is there any position group in this draft class you think may be underrated? Maybe there's some value, specifically in day 2, maybe into day 3. I know running back's often a group that's where you take those flyers, but is there another position group you feel like's a little deeper maybe than people are talking about?
I think the edge group, because it is so, as you mentioned, the differences in those guys, so you could see a lot of fluctuation of 32 teams will have all, let's say, the top 10 ranked completely different, whereas in years past, there's one or two dudes, are really, those are there's the Myles Garrett, there's the, that guy. Whereas this year, that depth will go with the edge rushers because they are so different. And I think there's a really good group of good players. You know, when you watch players, you want to say, that's a good player, not, well, I know he ran fast, but, well, he's not productive. You know, you never want that. So I think there's a really good group of those edge guys. Like, he's a good player, and let's see if he's our guy.
You mentioned your time with the Giants, which I'll let go. You know, Patriots people are not really too thrilled about that, but we'll let that one go. Just, you hear a lot about the Combine, and that the stuff that happens on the field at Lucas Oil at the end of the week is kind of not the real Combine, right? You know, all the stuff behind the scenes is that true? Like, would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, well, different teams place different value on what goes on this week. And, you know, I mentioned all 32 teams ranked different. It's all 32 ranked what the importance is. To now, teams aren't even here. You know, the Sean McVay situation there, like, we're not going, and they won. It's success. So other teams say, well, we can do that as well, whereas other teams only send half their staff. And for the most part, people don't know that the scouts have been on the road since August, you know, July, end of July, August, when they put the bulk, they put 90% of the work into what goes on. They should be anyway. And then this after season portion of it should be massaging all of this. So your foundation should be built whenever you have your first draft meetings before the Combine of, here's our draft board, here are the guys we identify, this is all the work our scouts have been busting their butts all year long to do. And now don't have a coach see somebody run a 40 and change what we got going on here. Right. You know, that's when you start getting into mistakes. When the after-season process, you start inventing players or crushing players. To me, it's really about always the success of the best teams identify the really good players on the field and let this process massage the rest.
Just one more for you, Mark. Is there a player or two that you just love in this draft? Couple guys that your favorite guys?
Yeah, every year I have a favorite. And so this year it's our Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. Geez. You talk about Mesidor being like this guy. When I started to watch him, he was just fun to watch. There's certain ones you evaluate and you just keep watching them just because you want to see them do fun stuff and entertaining stuff. So a little bit undersized, but you know, compare Robert Mathis. Some of you remember Robert Mathis from right here with the Colts, terrorized Joe a little bit. Yeah, like that same kind of build, that same sort of explosiveness, just much tougher and stronger, more powerful for their size. So I think, you know, he's a guy down there as well that, like, that's a Patriot type, that's a Vrabel type player.
Pop for me too.
I think we're all on the same page there. You mentioned the coaches kind of coming in and changing the scouting and all that. How often, because, you know, we just kind of nerd out and sit here and talk about prospects all day long and argue. How much does that actually happen behind the scenes, that you guys are just in a meeting room, and somebody's standing on the table from somebody, and you're kind of going back and forth?
You know, all coaches aren't created the same. All scouts aren't created the same. All working relationships aren't the same. So that's why, again, you have to have those relationships with your coaches, and you know, your DB coach may know that, like, oh, cool, I know this is where's your O-line coach in your office every day. Mark, hey, what about, can I get my guy up? Can we get? So that's a real thing where either in the meeting or behind the scenes, like, guys are fighting and lobbying for their players because it's a natural inclination. Like, I want more players. You know, that's natural for coaches. I always understood, like, I get it, but you know, we're trying to do what's best for the team and get the value for the team, not just your certain position. And the best teams that do it, they know that relationship and how to navigate that.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much for sitting down with us. Enjoy the rest of the Combine.
Mark, appreciate it.
My pleasure.